Please excuse me, but this presentation is only available in Spanish for the projection on the screen. It's the only presentation that is not available in English. So, this is a cycle, the management cycle of the UNHCR, and normally these are cycles of 1 to 2 years, and that is to say multi-year programs, although the budgeting is managed on a yearly basis. This starts with the programming cycle by conducting an evaluation of the situation, the planning, then that is the development of the UNHCR plan, and then we have all the proposals, the monitoring how this is progressing in terms of the activities, and then at the end of the year we have the reports production. We have reporting at half the year and then at the end of the year, and this concludes with the evaluation that allows the next year to resume the same cycle once again. And so at the level of diagnosis, we should use the tool towards zero statelessness if a country desires to do so, or an operation of the UNHCR to use the baselines that can be useful for the planning of the operation plan by the UNHCR. So first of all, we have the results that become a strategy, a response from the operational point of view vis-a-vis the needs that people have. And as you know, this is not including the stakeholders as those who are stateless, but also people who are at risk of the statelessness or who require the confirmation of their nationality. There is first an analysis of the offices concerning the local situation and eventually how this can impact in the global. And then we have the budgeting, and they are conducted on two bases. First, we have the comprehensive plan, and then we have the prioritized budgeting. So we establish all the activities that would be required in order to meet the needs that have been exposed on the plan, and then based on priorities, as there are restricted resources or less funding that require, what the operation is going to establish as a priority to attain the objectives and to develop the activities. So I always insist on the importance of the offices in terms of establishing the needs that they may have in terms of statelessness, and if we need to envisage additional funding in order to conduct more activities, and if there are funds, they will be developed. So we have the operation plan to establish the strategies for protection and solutions. Protection, as we saw before, is in terms of ensuring the legal condition of migrants, stateless migrant like Maha, and then to ensure the naturalization. Then it provides everything for the accomplishment of these objectives, these translating to projects and the indicators and the goals to measure the progress of the operation, establishing the budgeting, and it also conducts this evaluation. This is more or less the operations cycle. The operation defines the targeted population. The targeted population could be the stateless people, the people at risk of statelessness, and the goal in terms of that targeted population. For example, in the context, in national context, when people don't have the documents to give a proof of their nationality. So maybe the objective here is to confirm the nationality, the people or to reduce the risk of statelessness. And in here we establish the objective. For example, if we speak of a population of 10,000 people that do not have nationality document, the objective could be at least half of them getting this at the end of the year as a result. And to this end, we need to analyze the problem as well as the underlying causes. If the problem is that there is no other documentation tool because of discrimination, for example, as a result of the ethnical origin of people or the nationality of the people involved. To do this programming, we have a budget. First of all, one that is an indication and the other one that is fixed. And we have the budget that is under this structure referred to as AOL, that is to say what the office would be in case they have the additional funding. And I would like to express something regarding funding. And although it is not confirmed, there is a proposal in Geneva that in order to support the implementation of projects as a preparation for the high-level meeting of 2019, there could be some incentive funds for the projects next year. And I'm just giving you the scoop here because this will depend on what the office can get as funding in order to structure this whole budgeting. And in case that this additional funding is available for next year in order to implement the projects, the operations that have already envisaged activities under what we call the AOL, that is in case of receiving the additional funding, will be in conditions to submit the project so that they can receive this additional funding. So if a country joins in at these projects and creates a project that can benefit from the additional funding, there are more possibilities to be eligible for funding in order to support the materialization of these projects before this high-level meeting. And this doesn't exist already, and not necessarily will be available, but you should know how this system of planning is managed by the UNHCR, and will do everything that is possible so that this is available by the beginning of next year. How we define the priorities or how we have the reference plans. First of all, we have the global strategies, the priorities, and then we have the regional priorities or the regional frameworks. For the Latin American and Caribbean countries, the Brazil plan is our plan of reference in the region. Then we have the local priorities, the need for may differ amongst countries. As I said before, although we have thought of these in terms of multiple years for the plan, the allocation of budget is done differently, and sometimes it depends if a donor country may want to do contributions. A donor country may want to give funds to the UNHCR so that the money is used for statelessness issues. And here on this table, you can see what I was referring to before, the priorities for resources, because sometimes there are some activities that have priorities. Sometimes they have partial priorities or they have no priorities. So if you receive additional budgeting, eventually this could be done. As you know, the UNHCR funding will depend on this, and in October they resolve the allocation of funds. So in March we do a proposal, and finally this will be approved in October for the next year. In November, we review the operations plan at the level of the offices to adjust it for the final approval that is received for budget. So the whole logics I am sharing with you so that you can understand how we have possibilities or restrictions to support some projects. But once again, these operations plans should reflect the participatory analysis for zero statelessness, and to have the protection and solutions that should be oriented by the local regional priorities and targeted to providing solutions. Definitely each one of these initiatives will be dependent on the confirmation of the nationality, because all other actions are positive, are part of the things we have to do as a work. But at the end of the day, as Maha said, the important is that a person should have a nationality or have a proof of holding a nationality. This is the macro level how this operation plan works for the UNHCR, and for next year we have the proposals that have been submitted by the offices. As I said before, the budgeting is reviewed by the standing committee of the UNHCR, and then it is approved by the executive committee, and at the end of November the offices do the adjustments for the proposal that has been submitted for the operations plan as a function of the budget that has been already approved. And in case that there are some proposals that are not priorities in terms of budget, if they receive additional funding, they can realize them. So this is the macro level how we should include all the statelessness issues in the operational plan so that we can work then at the level of projects. Now, to discuss the projects, I will give the floor now to the Finaloso, who is in charge of the national office in Chile.
Hola, bueno, buenos días a todos y todas.
Good morning, everyone.
Bueno, acá, espera, Claudia, vos vas a poner acá. Ahí está. Igual son fotos, así que
I'm going to show pictures
quería
in my
compartir con
presentation.
ustedes
I
en
wanted
función
to
del tema
share with
que
you
vamos a
something
abordar
related
ahora,
to the
que es el
topic that we're
proyecto
going to
sobre
approach
implementación
now,
de
the
la
design of
Naturalization.
projects and the
Este
implementation of
proyecto
national
fue un
strategies.
proyecto
And this
Chile
is the
reconoce
story
que
of a
empezó
project Chile
una
Reconoce is
iniciativa
called. This
de
is
la
an
sociedad
initiative that
civil
started as
en
an
el año
initiative of the civil
2015.
society
Y acá
in
tenemos un poco
2015, and here in this book we have the projects that we did in the
fue un
last 3 years, and
proyecto
this was a
que
project
se inició
that
para
started,
sacar en
as you
consideración la
know and
Constitución Política de
somebody
Chile
discussed yesterday,
reconoce
the
la nacionalidad
Constitution of
chilena a
Chile
todas las
recognizes
personas
the
nacidas en
nationality
el
to all
territorio
citizens
nacional,
born in
a
the national
excepción
territory,
de
with the
lo
exception
que
of
la Constitución
the
señala como hijos de extranjeros transferidos.
children of
Hasta el año
foreigners in
2014,
transit. Till
la
2014,
administración
the
requería de
administration,
niños
when
nacidos en el territorio
registering the
interpretaba que
children
un
born
extranjero
in the
transeúnte iba a
country,
ser asimilado
interpreted
a las
that
categorías
this
vulneradas en la
child
sociedad.
of the foreign
Por
in
lo tanto, más
transit
de
would be
4.000
considered as
niños
an irregular
que nacieron en Chile
migrant.
hasta el
And
año 2012
those who
en el
were
periodo de
born
la
till
presente normativa fueron
2014
inscritos como hijos
were
de extranjeros
registered
transferidos.
as the children population of foreigners in transit. Many of them couldn't have access to any other nationality of the parents, for example, and just a few of them, some of these 4,000 people, as of 2011 to 2014, they had some reclamations of nationality. This is constitutional recourse that, according to the Constitution, this is a deprivation, arbitrary deprivation of their nationality, and they can present this claim to the Supreme Court to claim for the Chilean nationality. Until 2014, and through the juridical clinics of the Universidad de Portales, Alberto Hurtado, and the Assistant Corporation and other lawyers, they were able to have access to this mechanism, and just 10 people were able to do that in 5 years.
Court confirmed all of the Chilean nationality to all these people. They said that what the civil code needs to be interpreted in terms of the concepts of the common sense of the words, meaning that a foreigner in transit is only who is in transit. It can be a tourist or a crew member, but not a migrant without a situation that is regular, with a regular situation. So this sentence in the year 2014 was modified at management level, at administrative level. In Foreign Affairs and Migrations Department of the National Registry was modified. So from the year 2014 on, this was interpreted and adjusted to the sentence of the Supreme Court of Chile, and all children that are born in national territory from 2014 on have to be registered as Chilean, except for children of tourists or crew members or whoever are in transit in the country. Now, what happens with all those that had been registered earlier? That was the starting question that two legal clinics established. And we also have Francisca here that worked from the very beginning of the project, so maybe later on she can add to this. With this diagnosis, what these clinics did with some small funds of international cooperation that existed at the time decided to look for these children that had been registered as children of foreigner in transit. What they had at the moment was a database that was provided to the National Registry with the names of more than 2,800 people that all lived in the national territory. There was a preliminary analysis of the database, and almost half of them were in the north of the country, in the regions of Arica, Parinacota, and Tarapacá. She is Francisca. She is the mother of Jamie and Diego. Diego did not want to be in the picture. Both her children were registered as children of foreigner in transit with no other nationality, and as a consequence of their registry and of not having the Chilean nationality, when they were very small, they had serious difficulties in terms of accessing health. Diego had lost his sight in one of his eyes, as when he went to the hospital in an emergency situation, they did not want to take care of him. So with these very small resources and the identification of the problem, there was very basic information, and these people working in this area went to the north of the country and went around many different small villages that are very far from cities with lists of people that were not updated, and they tried to look for these children of foreigner in transit. At the time in 2015, two regions, Arica and Tarapacá, were visited, and they started with Tarapacá. This was like trial and error. We knocked on doors of houses, and they said, yes, I believe that. Yes, over there we have somebody that is still having that children of foreigner in transit. registry, and it was very hard for us to reach these people. In Iquique, we were able to find around 30 people. Right after this, we went to Tarapacá, the very last region of Chile that has a border with Peru. And I believe that we found one of the key of this project. We went to schools. In schools, in only one school, in an agricultural school in Azapa Valley, 137 cases were identified. The people that worked in this legal clinic and that participated in the project, they sat a number of days to check all of the birth certificates of the children that were registered in school, and 137 of these children were identified. Right after this, and this is why I have this picture of the Supreme Court, these legal clinics and the organization of the civil society decided to present a claim of nationality for the 167 cases that had been identified. Can you imagine that in 5 years only 10 cases have been presented? In just one instant, 167 would be presented. So this presentation was done. It was a huge file, as each case had the date of entry of the parents, the birth certificates, certificates of other types, etc. When the government, well, of course, the claim for nationality is presented to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court requests reports to the Foreign Affairs Ministry and to the Internal Affairs Ministry. When Foreign Affairs responded, they said that considering the jurisprudence of the Inter-American human rights system, and they included the different sentences, they said that all children should be recognized as Chilean. So the negotiation table or mediation table was created within the Supreme Court, and right after that situation, all children were considered as Chilean. What is interesting of this instance is that it allowed to open dialogue with the different institutions in the state to be able to add them to the project, include them in the project, and to other organizations of the civil society. Therefore, as a consequence of this first stage, in 2016, when the project Chile Reconoce is born, right after this judicial activity happened, the Human Rights Department were added to this, Migrations Department, the service of the National Registry Office. So this had begun as a very small initiative, and it became an interinstitutional project involving the civil society, autonomous organizations such as human rights departments, organizations, and the government, the executive power, the Internal Affairs Ministry, and the National Registry Office. Each one of them participated in the project by, for example, providing the generation of a mechanism or an accelerated procedure for those people that were claiming their Chilean nationality. On behalf of the National Registry, it was very active in offering information. Migrations and Immigration Department created an updated mechanism that was faster for all these cases, and the civil society and the Human Rights Department, through their offices throughout the territory, committed to, or what they did at least in the year 2016, was to continue searching for the different cases. In the year 2016, and with the support of the UNHCR and the funds that they provided for the continuance of the project, they kept on working with the identification of cases, and there was a priority established for the promotion and the work with the different communities. It was not only then UNHCR or the clinics or the civil society together with the state that would be looking for the cases, but they tried to generate an instance within the communities in the north and the leaders that work with migrants, and be able to approach this situation of children that are children of foreigners in transit. There were also other 100 cases who were confirmed nationality later on. Different instances existed in terms of confirmation. There was a call for the whole of the society through social networks, through the government, through UNHCR's networks, through the different universities, to be able to gather as massively as possible the most amount of children possible. There was a training activity done with certain instances or public organizations that allowed to establish the basis for this practice, or maybe this change of criteria in interpretation would be consolidated within the country. In 2017, or by the end of 2016, the initiative Chile Reconoce kept on growing, and yes, UNICEF became part of it. We worked together with them in identifying children as well as with the creation of promotion material. The Ministry of Education and the Department of Minors also participated here. This was a key element. As I mentioned at the beginning, when this began in 2015, the place where it was easier to identify children that had been registered as children of foreigner in transit were schools. So the Ministry of Education went through all of the schools at national level to be able to identify where these children were, the ones that are still registered as children of foreigner in transit, and were not able to obtain a nationality. In 2017, there was also the strengthening of the support of UNHCR at financial and resource and for funds also. And this involved all of the different actors I mentioned earlier. In 2017, also, and as part, well, yes, as part of the project, May 25th last year, there was a very important event held in La Moneda with the president of the time, where she committed to adhering to both conventions. As you know, Chile just recently ended with the adhesion process. Up to last year, it was one of the few countries in the region that had not adhered to these conventions. So, May last year, there was an activity in La Moneda where the president had provided nationality for these children, and it offered them their birth certificates as Chilean. It meant that there would be more visibility to the project and to accelerate the process of adhesion or accession to convention. What will be happening, what will happen now, our intent, and we know that the government is interested in being able to continue with the project, what we want is to have this an institutional project that involves all instances that had already been working in the area. We continue with our work very close to UNICEF. UNHCR and UNICEF have an alliance for eradication of children's statelessness. We know that everybody is involved in this area. And in 2015, there were around 2,800 children of foreigners in transit. Now, it's only around 2,000. The number has dropped, but there are still a number of children that still have this very same registry. There's a challenge related to information and the databases that the state has. Maybe the number is not the ones living in Chile maybe are not really 2,000. So the strategy to search for these children have to be adapted to the situation. UNHCR will keep on supporting the project in the framework related to statelessness in Chile. And one of the priorities that we identified last year and in which we work is the creation of promotion material to be able to present it in schools, public officers, and any organization that is working in this area. And just to end, I would like to share with you a very short video or material that we created last year that somehow shows the project and the situation really in Chile. We all have the possibility.
Y una nacionalidad.
Claudia está atenta.
Todas las personas
We all have the right to have a name and a nationality. This is part of our identity. Nationality is a link that unites a person with a state, ensuring protection and allows them to fully participate in the society. But there are persons that do not have nationality, yes, and they're known as stateless. Every 10 minutes, there's somebody born stateless in the country, and around 10 million people are in this situation in the world. Those that do not have a nationality feel ignored by society, and frequently the access to rights is limited. To protect these people, the Agency of the United Nations for the Refugees, together with states and with organizations of the civil society, coordinating the identification, prevention, protection, and resolving the possible cases of statelessness. In Chile, a project has been created to identify those people that could be in risk of statelessness. What is this about? Anybody that is born in Chile is Chilean except for children whose parents are either diplomatic officers or foreigners in transit. Foreign in transit is that person that is just in transit in the country, such as tourists and crew members. Nonetheless, up to year 2014, those people that were in irregular migration situation were also considered as foreigners in transit. Therefore, their children were not recognized as Chilean nationals. Compared to other people that, same as them, were born in Chile, the children of foreigner in transit are people that are discriminated and frequently have difficulties to obtain a job, housing, and access to social programs. They are also not allowed to work in the public activities or in any other kind of public post. From the year 2016, the state, together with UNHCR, UNICEF, and organizations of the civil society, are working in the project Chile Reconoce, Chile Recognizes, to identify all these people and be able to correct this impairment in their rights so that they can have many rights that up to now have not been able to enjoy. We are advancing, but much needs to be done. We have to find hundreds of children and adults that are all in this situation and work for them never to happen again. We all have a right to have a nationality. To be able to do so, your commitment is key element. Get informed, talk about this, and be part of the campaign I Belong to End Statelessness at world level.
So this is the video we elaborated in last year, and it's available on the internet if you want to share that. The idea is to use this video in training sessions with the public officers, as well as in the schools with the grassroots organizations, migrant communities, not only here, but in the rest of the country, and mainly in the regions of the north of Chile. I don't know if you already have a question.
Qué buena pregunta. En YouTube.
Good question. Where is the video? On YouTube. There are leaflets and there is visual material as well as many videos. We have comments of the people. There are testimonials of the people who were benefited from the project, and we can share all of that with you later on. As a matter of fact, in the afternoon, there will be someone who will have an interview with Maha, that is to say, the parents and the children who were reached by this project last year, and they were not able to come earlier because they had already some work commitment, but they will be here. Thank you very much, Delfina. I would like to let you know that in the pen drive we gave you, there is a folder that is called videos, and you will see many of the programs of the Plan of Brazil, the Action Plan of Brazil, explaining what a stateless person is, which their entitlements are, and so on. And there are some of these videos by Chile Reconoce. They are available in both Spanish and English, and sometimes they are available in Spanish with captions in English, so you can find there some additional resources. So, as we have already covered what we are doing as UNHCR in operational terms and projects, and what we can provide as a support in concrete manner, now I would like to open a space where we will have some presentations from Ecuador, Costa Rica, and Redam. So I will give the floor now to Maria Fernanda so that she can elaborate about this organic law of human mobility in Ecuador and how the law has included the regulation and the statelessness issue. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to apologize with my colleagues because I don't have the presentation in English. And we assume this responsibility. However, we will palliate the situation by forwarding you the presentation with the corresponding translation. So first of all, I would like to express a few words. I'm very bad with my memory, so I had to write this. The government of Ecuador would like to thank the UNHCR, the representation of the different countries we have been working with and being able to share for 2 days. Now we would like to greet those who are connecting this event through the networks, especially a greeting for our representative of the mission, Christina, as well as my country would like to fully appreciate Maha Mamo for sharing her life experience, for inviting us to feel empathy. And this requires empathy in order to reflect upon this idea of the public policies and how we can impinge on the quality of life of stateless people. And that is the challenge that you are proposing, Maha. And we would like to make our major efforts to make it come true. My country is also celebrating the segment of Maria Fernanda Espinosa as president of the General Assembly. And this is a challenge for the women in Latin America who are fighting day by day for inequality in all the walks of life. Please count with the role of Ecuador in order to continue and promote the free mobility of the people without distinction at all. The regulation framework in Ecuador has been applied to the refugees and stateless people, and this has been developed gradually till today. And Ecuador is guaranteeing today the highest standards of human rights in the organic law of human mobility, the regulation, and the secondary auxiliary regulation. We also have the right of the condemnation without sanction for the irregular sojourn, and also the right to appeal and the free proceedings. And now I will make a short presentation.
Las temáticas que hemos propuesto.
So the topics we are proposing are the historical data, the acquisition guarantee procedures, and technical reports regarding the nationality and naturalization. To go into the context, I would like to pinpoint the map of my country here, and I would like to let you know that we have these zone coordinations in each one of the representations that you see depicted on the map. First of all, we have 9 zones where we are providing all the services from the Foreign Affairs Ministry and Human Mobility. For us, it's very important, the historical item. And in here, we have this table reflecting the acknowledgement of refugees that Ecuador has done historically as of 1989 till 2018. You can see here that Ecuador is welcoming 62,644 people till date. And I would like to share now that within the direction of international protection, and since we have a very important number of requests and applications we received, we have created a contingency plan, and this plan started to go into force in 2018. And the proposal was to come up with a commission and within 8 work days can recognize these 500 cases, and we first tested with 300 cases, and we were very happy to see that till 31st May this year we have seen 2,000 and something of these requests that had a response, 2,689 of them, and these are the decisions that these commissions are taking in terms of statelessness and refugees. And how is the acquisition of the nationality done? In 2008, we can said that can be by birth or in abroad, with parents being Ecuadorians and with a degree of blood relations. And we can see that this is also concerning the people from different populations in the country. And we have the nationality by naturalization for those who receive this card of naturalization, and the people who are adopted also by the Ecuadorian, except with the opposition to that, also that in case that they are marrying with an Ecuadorian and who have rendered relevant services to the country. According to this law of mobility, human mobility, we already include these notion of being stateless, and it will be recognized all the people who are not considered to be citizens or by any state, basically, or in relation with their constitution. First of all, we have this customized procedure. We have the burden of the proof that is shared, the priority, and the free procedures, the confidentiality that is very important, also the non-sanction due to irregular access in the country, the irregular entry to the country. And in here we have the procedure. And within this procedure, it is important to explain that this is very similar or quite the same as we have with the asylum seekers. This starts with an application, we have the registry, and we pass this interview. And this interview gives us all the inputs to see if the person is eligible for the procedure. And this point is fundamental because we have found already a case that let us know that this person was stateless, but this person at the same time could be a refugee. And therefore, this interview gives us all the inputs in order to consider what to do in the next process. And when we produce the technical report, as you know, all of you know, if a person is a refugee, we cannot to look for information in the source country, origin country, through the official sources, but we have to do this internal search of information, and that's why it's very important to establish everything that the technical report should contain. If the person is admitted or eligible for procedure, we definitely give them the humanitarian visa. We had already case of a stateless seeker, and then we gave him this humanitarian visa. He's waiting for the results. Next, we have a new interview, in-depth interview, to get more elements for analysis. The technical report is produced by an officer of eligibility who will include the recommendation. The recommendation is not binding, however, is an important source. Is an element that allows the commissioners to have a starting point. Then this goes to a commission, and I will explain now what happens at the commission. Before this organic law of human mobility, the commission consisted of the Interior Department and the Justice Department, are a representative of the Foreign Affairs Department. As of this new act, the responsibility is on the officers of the Foreign Affairs Ministry exclusively, and this allowed to streamline the ability to respond to these requests in a better manner. And the Commission does the evaluation, and they either acknowledge the case or deny this request. And when the person is acknowledged and the person approaches our offices, we provide this person with this visa of international protection for the case of stateless or recognized refugees. If the response is negative, the person can appeal to the decision, and to review this appeal or do the appeal, this person doesn't require representation, legal representation, but this is just done through a mere signature. As I mentioned before, it's very important for us to have this technical report that is produced, and out of the experience, short experience that we have in the case of statelessness, it is very important for us to determine the countries that have relevant or significant link, to do a comprehensive study of the legislation prevailing in those countries to see whether this person is at the same time an asylum seeker. We should enter into contact with this country, and we do this with the Commission of Inclusion for the community, and this will get in touch with the diplomatic missions abroad. And we have to determine also if any of the states recognizes or acknowledges this person as a national. Now, in terms of naturalization, here we see some of the requirements that should be met. And amongst them, we have 2 years as of the acknowledgement with the humanitarian visas when they are seekers, and this is under the category of temporary visitor, and then they become temporary residents. So they already meet this term of 2 years. Because beforehand it used to be 3. And a copy of the file is required, that is created by this Direction of International Protection. We don't ask them to have the birth certificate or passport. So I would like to let you know that we are now making a proposal to change the amount that we charge, because before this procedure was had a cost of $50, and $700. So now we are changing, we're trying to keep just $50, but reducing the access to $300. So we're waiting for this to be approved by the institution that have a competence. And thank you very much.
Hi. Es proceso.
This whole process, this whole process, todo este proceso pasa cuando una patria está fuera del Ecuador o dentro de Ecuador. Adentro. ¿Tienen algún proceso cuando una persona apátrida fuera del Ecuador? Por ejemplo, aquí en el proceso usted dice que al final ellos van a obtener una visa humanitaria con pasaporte. Si está dentro, ¿por qué necesita visa para ese pasaporte? Humanitarian visa is a document that we generate as a result of the registry done. This visa is not printed in a passport. It is just an ID card with your information. Therefore, we do not need a passport just to print the visa. It is just a category. Okay, yes. They have to be in Ecuadorian territory. They have to be in the country. Are there more questions? I would like to comment that from the year 2017, with the enactment of the organic law, Ecuador has this condition of the statelessness idea. It is one of the efforts that Ecuador is showing. What used to be done was, as there was no possibility to provide a response to people, they were recognized as refugees. That legally was not what they were supposed to be. So now to have a specific case will be very helpful, even though we do not have that many cases. As Maria Fernanda was explaining, we only have 2 in the system. It does help, though, to fulfill the international obligations in the subject of statelessness. Are there more questions? At some point you were talking about simultaneous procedures, where you were talking about when a person requests or presents a requirement, and that could apply for the refugee status. So how is this working? There are 2 simultaneous procedures. One is above the other. How does this work? Well, the practical case that we had was of a person that requested asylum at some first instance, but they did not have the proper elements and was not accepted. What was done then, that through the public prosecutor's office, which is the free representation in Ecuador, it was requested to reconsider the case and be assessed as a possible statelessness. In this case, what we did was a new registry, as the system does not allow for simultaneous changes, but we deactivated one as the asylum seeker and we started a new one as stateless. Yes, we started with this procedure, but as Andrea was mentioning, we only have 2 cases, and for us it's very important to have these spaces, as it allows us to think what could come in the future. and also prepare the possibility to respond. So procedure does not establish what needs to be done when a person has an application as stateless, and when analyzing this, the the Commission for Refugee analyzes this, the CONARE, and what you were saying in terms of confidentiality, for example, for statelessness, we check with the state that they could be having a link, but not for asylum. So if you have it in the procedure, and in that case, there is a priority for asylum, or you keep two simultaneous procedures to be able to have both status. It is important. What you're mentioning is important. The visa that we provide when there is recognition has international protection. We do not establish a difference between the documents, but yes, in the recognition and the response that the committee has in the document, you will be considered a person with a need for international protection. This is a very wide umbrella that allows to have both things, at least in a document. In the document, and resolution to this recognition should incorporate this, that the person is a obtained refugee and is also stateless. Thank you for your presentation. I have a doubt. With regard to need to request information from other countries in terms of their link, how is this done? Was it necessary to have maybe an information campaign together with embassies so that they can understand and get to know the procedure? Or statelessness, I don't believe, is something that is very well known by them. So how is this happening? The procedure, this. It is important to mention that in this moment is where the best ideas will arise. We have a time for training for all those people that are going to a diplomatic mission. So what we have been thinking about is the need to incorporate at least one module about international protection, where those people that will go to these missions can have previous knowledge to be able to properly respond to the situations. It is important to mention that Ecuador has the challenge of establishing a priority and fast response to requests of stateless persons. We undoubtedly need our diplomatic missions improving the level of response so that they can have previous information and get to know what it is that they have to offer in solving these problems. That is the main challenge. We also believe that it is very important, and as a matter of fact, we put it into practice, that in this area, we invited somebody from our diplomatic mission. We have her here, she's Cristina, and we, as Ecuador, are interested to have our representatives be present in these activities. There's no better way to be able to approach problems if it is not with knowledge. So the more people that have knowledge about this will improve the possibility to respond. Thank you. Thank you, Maria Fernanda, for sharing the experience of Ecuador. It is very important. It's one of the important advances in the region, the one that stands out. And I would like to offer the floor to Mr. Luis Antonio Bolaños, who is an important ally in eradication of statelessness. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't know what time it is. Nice meeting you. Thank you very much to UNHCR to share the different experiences, especially of Costa Rica, seen from the point of view of the National Registry Office. The UNHCR has been looking into an organization in Latin America and the Caribbean, and there was a plenary session participation, and we are going to be supported with something that has been created also in Colombia. So the idea to have UNHCR participate is that we, national registries, are the organizations that work in this area, and we have the national registry being the one that is providing nationality by naturalization to foreigners. So the first thing that I would like to mention is that in Costa Rica we have two projects that one became a model of care, which is the Chiriticos project, and there's also not a project, but rather an incorporation in a regulation. We have a regulation for any requirements for naturalization in the National Registry Office. The National Registry is dependent of another department that can act in critical situations, and we incorporated in the regulation what I will be presenting from here on. And this is the possibility of having a person that has been considered stateless by the ministry can be considered a national from Costa Rica. How is this Chiriticos project born? There is a meeting of the Committee of the Children's Rights that expresses that in Costa Rica there is a population, a migrant population that were in, there could be the possibility of being in risk of statelessness. As we were going to the places that were they migrating to, and we were leaving people out of being registered. What is important is that the state recommends the possibility of establishing bilateral agreements with neighboring countries. Costa Rica is a country where human rights has always been ahead of all. We have been ratified by all of the conventions related to human rights. As a matter of fact, the Convention for Refugees and about the stateless statute have been ratified since 1977 in our country. It has also been committed to all of the meetings and anything related to refugees and stateless persons. The plan of Brazil, Cartagena plus 20, Costa Rica has always been supporting these activities, and it is the first country that is participating in the I Belong campaign. The President of the Republic was already talking a couple of years ago about being part of this campaign. The first thing that we did in the Chiriticos project was to see if the problem really existed. We go on field, we create a map just to see if there were people that had not been registered, and we identified that yes, and we have a border with Panama on the south, and we realized that people from the registry in Panama as well as in Costa Rica had not registered a certain amount of people. So the issue of this population is that they are migrating from Chiriqui. This is why it's called Chiriticos, because they're all ticos, and this is the name of the project, Chiriticos, and they are migrating to be able to obtain coffee, and they work also in the areas of bananas. And the problem is that they are migrating to areas where they had not been naturalized, as these were coffee farms. The employees that were there were not even working in a good labor conditions. This project basically is to try to link the National Registry Office of Costa Rica and Panama and to go to both areas, and somebody would have to solve their problem either by registering them or providing them with documents or modifying registry. Many times people would be called one way in Costa Rica, they would go to Chiriquí in Panama, they were registering with different names, and when working on field, we realized that there were problems with this area, and we started to making parallel registries without harming them. And of course, there were many registries that people had lied for to be able just to obtain this documentation. We did not worry about this, and we just provided them with the proper registry. We reached an agreement with Panama, which has meant that we can work together in the country. We also signed a memo of understanding with UNHCR that is a fundamental element in this whole process. And up to date, we, in 2015, when the diagnosis was established, in 2016, 2017, and in 2018, we have been able to go to a certain area that is very complicated to enter. We had, even though it's in Costa Rica, we have to go in through Panama.
¿Qué hemos hecho en Chiriticos? En tema.
So, what is Chiriquitos involved in? In the area of prevention, we have taken care of 18,358 cases. We have more than 20,000 up to date. 5,838 are from Costa Rica and 12,520 are from Panama. This is a whole population from Panama. Many that have been born in Costa Rica are now from Costa Rica and Panama. They're basically a population from Panama. We have registered 2,197 people. These registries, at least from Costa Rica, they are 127 persons that are over 10 years of age. They are late registries. And we have registered a very large number. In Panama, they have registered 2,070, and many of them, because they're born in Costa Rica, but they are children of Panamanian parents, they're registered this way. In the area of protection, we have provided 1,342 certificates for Costa Rica, 773 for Panama. We have this here as many of these people had no documentation. Maybe they were registered in Costa Rica or registered in Panama, but they had no documents, and there are impaired populations. They're poor. We have to take them the documents, as they have no time to be able to travel to go to the National Registry offices for their documents.
So part of these ID cards that have been processed have been given by the officers themselves at the zones of influence. So this is basically related to this Chiriticos project. Chiriticos is a project that has an impressive social content and seeking to help this low-income population of the country, who are both Costa Rican and Panamanian, and many of them just Panamanian, that are moving every year to harvest the coffee in our country. Then we have another project that came up as part of a specific regulation, that is the regulation. First, I have to explain, in 2016, there is an executive law decree allowing the people to apply for this condition of stateless. And in Costa Rica, we had a declaration of many stateless people, but this was not formalized in our regulation. When the executive power gives origin to this decree, we in the National Registrar who give the nationality, we review the Constitution once again, and we realize that when referring to these people who can obtain this nationality by naturalization means nationals of other countries, the Central Americans, the, the people from Iberoamerica, and the Constitution always refers to people who already hold a nationality. Now, in the case of the stateless people, and the country has recognized that these people do not have a nationality, we certainly applied all the regulations and we amended this procedure. This regulation contains all the possibilities that we have in Costa Rica to be naturalized, that is to say, through marriage, the possibility of a national of another country to be naturalized because this person has been living for a period of time in Costa Rica. Now there is another chapter connected to the possibility that the people have, as the stateless people have, to obtain the nationality. This chapter is very straightforward. Here you can see some of the requirements of these documents. And I would like to underline the second one, the second requirement, that is to say, having resided officially in Costa Rica for a 2-year term. And this official residence, if a person, a stateless person stays in the country, this period of time will start these 2 years of stay, and then we have a maximum time. And during all this time, they were able to obtain the nationality. Then we have the proofs. Basically, they need to present a photocopy of the file that the Foreign Affairs Ministry organized, and there is a full coordination between them, and the first coordination starts trying to get the evidence that the person was born, and if not, we send this to the process to declare this person as stateless, and then this information is received back.
Yo con este caso que les voy a presentar,
I will conclude my presentation now, and in case you have a need for further clarification, I will respond to you. On March 26, Costa Rica was the scene of a historical milestone for Eloisa and for the Superior Court for the first time, and they provided the nationality of to a stateless person, that is to say, a person who has not been acknowledged as being national by any country around the world. And after 69 years, Eloisa will be proud to say that she is already Costa Rican citizen with all the full rights that the Constitution confers her, and within the framework of the activities developed by the institution, this story becomes a reference for many other nations. Obtaining the ID card for me is something that didn't help me at all. If I was sick at the hospital, for example, when I went, they told me they couldn't admit me, and I said, at least give me something as medicine because I am a diabetic patient. And I had a very high level of sugar in my blood, and I asked my God that I can cope with it, but because I didn't have the ID card, I couldn't take charge of me or ensure me the attention. According to the statistics by the United Nations today, there are around 10 million people in the state of statelessness. That is to say, that do not have a nationality that is well defined, and therefore they are invisible from the legal point of view vis-a-vis society. And for this new Costa Rican citizen, having this condition is a dream come true that is bringing her a lot of facility in her life. And this first case is before and after, according to the authorities from the civil register. And it's very important not only for the appeal court, but it's also very important worldwide. And in the Latin American context, this is a case that materializes this series of commitments that the country is engaging in through the ratification of two conventions that are targeted at reducing the number of statelessness. And this is something that ranks us first in the national context in not having only the legislation to confer the nationality to a stateless person, but also being able to give finally this nationality to a person. Eloisa is the first case in Latin America who already enjoys this status of nationality because she was first determined as a stateless person as of a reform amendment that was done in order to include a new reform for regulation of the civil status allows the person who have been already declared stateless by the Foreign Affairs Ministry can choose to opt for this nationality of Costa Rica, and this facilitates the procedure of bestowal of the nationality. As we know, these people do not have a nationality and they do not have a legal visibility in the country, and therefore by including this new regulation we can reinforce and to equip them with the rights, the legal and social rights, entitlements for these people. The family of Mrs. Eloisa has been a testimonial of all the hardship she had to go through while being stateless. Her daughter is narrating part of this reality that many people undergo in the region. We are six, and when we were children, we were separated from him. We were 5 years in foster home, and as she didn't have a document, it was much more difficult for her to struggle in front of a court or something of this nature for us. And they came to the point where she just could see us and could go, for example, to a church where we would be attending. My father helped her 5 years later so that we could go out of this foster home. And after we went out of there, it was difficult because she didn't have any documents and she didn't have an ID card. So when we wanted to help her out and to get an insurance and being able to do all the proceedings to get a housing unit, it was impossible because she didn't have any identification. But I think that most important thing for us was being in this orphan institution and not being with her. So after concluding all the proceedings that were required to obtain her Costa Rican nationality, when being acknowledged as a citizen and having her ID card, she was able to have all the legal entitlements that this ID represents. For example, she will be able to vote and having access to both medical and banking services. And I would like to thank very deeply because I will never forget this, because today I am a very happy woman, and I know if I am sick, ill, the insurance, health insurance, me because I already have my ID card, and I was able to touch their heart to help me out because I said, when I will have my ID? I said, Lord, help me. I said, I will have it someday. I will have it someday. And once I was called from the Yellow House to tell me what I had to do, and we come here, and I said, I'm very thankful to everyone, and I would like to bless everyone. Today, this tribunal is making a step forward to palliate the situation worldwide that is represented by statelessness, and this is not anymore part of Mrs. Eloisa Castro Mendez' life. The struggle against statelessness. Thank you very much.
No sé si alguien tiene alguna pregunta.
I don't know if you have any questions.
No hay pergunta, mas
No questions.
eu quero agradecer.
I would like to thank.
I want to thank
Quiero agradecer a Costa Rica por ser el primer país de todos los países de las Américas que realmente aplicaron y algo. Y ella tiene 69 años
Eu tenho 30.
y yo tengo 30, así que me quedan 39 años todavía en Brasil. Y yo no quiero esperar tanto tiempo, pero espero que los otros países también.
I hope that other countries as well.
Yo espero que también los otros países tomen los mismos pasos que ustedes tomaron, así que felicitaciones por esto.
¿No hay preguntas? ¿Tienen hambre?
No questions? Apparently you're hungry.
Listo, gracias.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, don Luis. Y
Bueno, nada más quisiera destacar,
Thank you, Luis. And I would like to highlight one of the questions that he mentioned is that this project Chiriticos is a response by the state to a recommendation that was made within this universal periodic review, and we can see one of the measures that can be taken and by taking into account all the recommendations by the state. And now we will have lunch at the Barcelona room that is on this same floor by the restrooms.
perdón, sí, perdón. Disculpa. No, le cedo la palabra a o la representante.
I will give the floor to one of the representatives from civil society from Redam and this American Network for Nationality. Good morning.
Bueno, buenos días a todos y todas.
Good morning, everyone. Before starting my presentation, I would like to thank the UNHCR, and unlike most of the people who are here, I don't work for any state, and I am not part of the UNHCR. And the coordinator of this network of the Americas for Nationality and Statelessness, and for me it's an honor, and I am learning a lot from you, and I think that this is very important for the work we do, being able to hear from you and collaborate with you in the framework of this campaign. First of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Red Anna. This is Red Anna is the network of the Americas about nationality and statelessness, and this is the acronym in Spanish.
It is an organization of the civil society that has academic initiatives and independent experts committed to the subject of statelessness in the Americas. The network seeks to create awareness of the current situation of statelessness in the region, identifying people that are affected by this and advocating for the recognition and respect of their rights. In this framework, what the network does is to be committed to the exchange of experiences and knowledge on the topic of statelessness to create a consolidated network that can defend the rights of stateless persons. Now, within our objectives is also to provide technical assistance to states in strengthening their protection mechanisms and exchange information with our sister organizations around the world. When was the network created and who are participating here? This was created in Washington in November 2014 in the framework of the launch of the global campaign to end statelessness. This is framed within the campaign, but also in the implementation of what we have been talking about, which is the Brazil Plan of Action, Chapter 6. The network rises in terms of organizing and sharing the work of the civil society in the Americas in considering this subject from a more regional perspective, therefore advancing towards eradication of statelessness. The network is considering many organizations around the continent along the almost 4 years ever since it was created. Membership has been growing, and now it is around 70 organizations involved in this. And among some of the organizations that created the network, we have CEGIL, which is the Center for Justice and International Law, who coordinates the network. It's mainly myself. The Open Society Justice Initiative, which is part of the Open Society Foundations, Canadian Center in Statelessness, Center for Human Rights of the University de Portales in Chile, and Center for Migration Observation and Social Development in the Caribbean, OPMICA, and the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights. Now, what is our work specifically about? It is to share information and best practices on statelessness in the Americas and to raise awareness about statelessness, advancing towards eradication of the situation, and also providing support in eradication of statelessness. Among these objectives, one of the things that some of the things we have been doing in these 3 years, we have met with different organizations and authorities. We have held web seminars, participated in events, conferences, and trainings by issuing bulletins about the situation of statelessness in the Americas, and even reporting in some cases about situations that exist in other parts of the world. And also we have a web page with centralized information on statelessness in the Americas. As you can see, the network is really exchanging information. It is not a network that presents legal cases, but we do share this kind of information. It is not the goal of its creation. As mentioned earlier, you can see some of the examples I was telling you about, the country visits. I can tell you that we, throughout the years, have been into Chile, Peru, Ecuador. We have met with ombudsmen, with legislators. We have commented on bills, for example, in Ecuador, and also the importance of issuing regulation about statelessness. Well, if you have any questions later, of course, and if I'm speaking too fast, please also let me know. So, as I was mentioning, part of the exchange of information that this network has is to hold web seminars. And you can see all the ones that we have held in the past years are in the web page. The idea of these seminars is that the experts in different areas of statelessness can tell us about the situation in their countries in special subjects, and this can be shared with the different organizations that are part of the network. As mentioned, it is in our webpage, and you can find it there and read it if you need it. Our website has a large amount of information about statelessness in the different countries, the ratification of the different treaties, and you can also see our yearly information, also with information about statelessness in any of the countries that are around. You can see which are the organizations that are working in the subject in the different countries. The bulletins that I mentioned earlier, the ANA network has published 15 bulletins in Spanish and English. Most of the information in the network can be found in English and Spanish. And what we are doing here is to share information about the different countries in the region, and also the information that is shared from other networks at global level. ANA network has been creating relationships with Central Asia, with Asia Pacific network, all in statelessness, of course, and in the European network. And we're starting to be in contact with the network in Africa. A very important part of the activities and work done by the network are the meetings, conference, workshops, events, and courses. Most of these activities have been done together with the UNHCR and the organizations that are part of the network. You can see some of them here. Maybe I can tell you that one of the most relevant ones, the ones that we have held these last periods of time, one is the one in Colombia together with the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Colombia, and another one in the Netherlands, and all supported by UNHCR, of course. But we have held training courses about the regulation and the standards in Chile and Peru. And you can also see that we are working with the United States and organizations that are working with this in the US. Now, I believe that how can we collaborate up to 2019? Well, I return this question to you. So how do you believe that we can cooperate with you going to the year 2019? The network can collaborate, providing visibility to the different problems that we see in the region. And as mentioned earlier, we can even work and provide visibility to the subject outside of the region. How there are many entries in the blogs from other networks, and we visibilize the situation of statelessness in other areas. Incidences in foreign affairs ministries and parliaments with ombudsmen, so that for any area that each one is working in can take the necessary measures to advance in this area. If there are bills to be able to cooperate, so that by 2019 they can be sanctioned, to train the affected population as well as state agents. As I mentioned, you can see that the network is usually working with workshops, and to participate, of course, at international level by sharing information on statelessness, and as well as good practices among this. And this is what I really wanted to present. You have my contact data, and I would like to thank you. Do you have any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Florencia. And now we can go out for lunch. And please, at 2:30, let us reconvene.